Okay, y'all, before we start the show, I have to talk with you about the sponsors of today's episode, Heartwise Health LLC. Are you looking to take your running game to the next level, improve your cardiovascular health, or to test your endurance with VO2 max testing? Look no further than Heartwise Health LLC. Founders Tori Parkinson and Jocelyn Frank are two experts in the performance and health and wellness field, and they're looking to help you reach your full potential through personalized coaching and science-based data based on data-driven testing. Tori, who is no stranger to lactic acid, is a pro marathon runner, a successful running coach, and a fitness instructor, while Jocelyn is a certified exercise physiologist through the American College of Sports Medicine and is a nationally board certified health and wellness coach in addition to being a fitness instructor as well. I've worked with Tori for almost a year, and her training has been a life-changing blessing for me. And now getting the chance to work with Jocelyn as well, using the science-based data from the lactate threshold testing, as well as the VO2 max testing, I'm trying to tell y'all, I am confident that I'm going to break the world record soon and very soon in the marathon. Be sure to visit their website, www.heartwisehealthllc.com, and their Instagram page, Heartwise Health LLC, for more information and to sign up. Trust me, you will not regret it. Now, on to today's episode. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, saints and ain'ts, and welcome to Lactic Acid. I'm your host, Dominique Smith, and today I have one of the biggest ballers in Canadian history back on the podcast. Has more hits than Drake and is definitely having a better year than him. No offense taken, please don't write an album about me. She's doing big things in running and especially outside of running, helping kids reach their wildest imaginations and dreams like Nickelodeon did in the 90s. She is none other than the legend, Miss Julianne Staehli. Julianne, welcome back, fam. How you doing?
Wow, thanks so much for having me and pronounce my name perfectly. That never happens, so that's huge.
I never forgot it. I don't know the first time. No, I think I watched when I was preparing the first time we talked a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And I listened to all the episodes that you done, and I heard like six different pronunciations of your name. And I was like, how do you break this down? And I don't know, I think it was Lindsey Hine that got it right. So I was like, you know what? We're not screwing this up. So
Yeah.
it's and y'all, it's not that difficult to pronounce. It really is not. Put some respect on sister's name. But yeah, I think it was 2 years ago. It has been 2 years.
Mhm.
Um, that you came back on, that you
Yeah.
dropped some serious nuggets of wisdom. Um, and so much has happened
Mhm.
um since those 2 years, which we'll talk about. A lot of cool things. But I asked you something back then, and you answered the fastest anyone has ever answered the opening question. No one has come close to it, which speaks to her greatness on and off the track. But have a little twist this time around. So it's springtime, as it was the last time we talked. And also, you sent me a taco song that I so desperately wanted to use for that episode, but copyright was like, yeah, we're gonna take this podcast down if you try to use this. But appreciate it still. Um, anyway, when you are awesome, just like you are, a few things are usually done to celebrate that, especially as spring, leaves are changing, temperatures are warming up. And so to celebrate your awesomeness and to give hope to the little people, three things are going to be done for you. So the first thing is when athletes do amazing things, they get put on a Wheaties box. But because you have exceeded all expectations and imaginations, they're going to give you free will. You get to put your face and your accolades on any box of cereal or oatmeal that your heart desires. Or granola. I forgot y'all runners love granola, so granola too. So one of the three, your face is going to be featured on it as a symbol of greatness. The second thing, there was a movie back in the day called Spy Kids. And there was a scene in Spy Kids where they were in a cave, and I thought it was a wallet, but it was just like little bags or whatever the case might be. I'm not really sure what it was, but they took this little tablet, they put it in a microwave, and the food, whatever's on that tablet was it. So in this case, in the movie, it was McDonald's. What they're going to do for you is you get to choose whatever food that you want, gourmet, whatever food and alcoholic beverage of your choice, or you could go plain water. That's cool. But it's going to be made for you at your beck and call. But here's the kicker. It cannot be tacos because that's what you chose the last time. So anything other than tacos. The last thing that's going to be done for you. Actually, we're just going to stick to those two because that's what I'm curious of. So I want the food and we want the Wheaties box or sorry, the box of cereal, granola, or whatever the case might be.
All right. Probably for a cereal, probably Cocoa Puffs, something peanut butter related. I think a good sweet treat if I had my face on that box of cereal. And I guess a meal on demand would have to be a good slice of pizza, and a margarita, a spicy margarita. I would have said tacos easily, but I'll go with the pizza.
A spicy margarita.
Spicy margarita. That's the newest in the collection.
Okay. Um, what is what like do you put sriracha or something in there? I'm very intrigued by this. Like what makes it spicy?
No, I think the recipe that has been perfected now, I do one part triple sec, one part tequila, and then one part simple syrup, and then lime juice. But then you do a jalapeno. So usually you cut up and put a few of the seeds and a little bit of the flesh as well. You shake that over ice until it's super chilled. And then I salt the rim and I don't put ice in the glass.
You are a winner in every that is yo, I'm glad we're recording this because this is this is going on the docket. Spicy, I'm thinking sriracha or some kind of hot sauce, but that is it's like okay, the seeds of a jalapeno. Wow. Thank you for that. That's such a hashtag blessing. I'd love that. Gosh, because I don't know. What, so you do like the lime margarita. Okay, I'm with that. Because that's something that I would roll with. Wow, okay. Going to the store and buy me some jalapenos and we're gonna
Yeah.
make that happen this weekend. Kind of peaks are you rolling with?
Yeah, pizza. I do like just kind of a real thin crust. We have Score in Kingston, which is definitely a staple, so I try and replicate that. But if it's a build it yourself at home, try and get some kind of homemade dough and then go from there. But I love like a barbecue chicken. I'm not opposed to pineapple. I
Oh,
definitely I can be pretty versatile when it comes to that, but definitely thin crust, no Chicago. I would say sort of on more on the east side in terms of the New York style. So yeah.
I hate Chicago. People in Chicago, please don't hate me. I hope to see you at the marathon this year, but I don't like all that dough. Like it's
Mhm.
just too much. I mean, I'm with you there. So you're making this now, basically.
Yeah, I think it can make for a good night. I mean, if you're going out and grabbing pizza, that's great too, if it's just a late night slice. But yeah, I like to cook. I have a little more time now to do that, and I think it you enjoy it a bit more once you've gone through that process.
It's so funny because a couple years ago you told me you cook out of necessity and not necessarily for fun.
Yeah.
And so now you're like top chef out here. Okay, I respect the hustle. I like that. I like that. And you're absolutely right. When you're not tired from running 20 miles a day, it makes a huge difference.
Mhm.
It makes a huge difference. Cocoa Puffs, I love that answer. I have not seen a box of Cocoa Puffs in years, but man, that chocolate milk that used to be formed from those puffs back in the day was something different. So I can definitely respect that. What I could also respect is the amazing things that you continue to do. And we'll talk about it throughout the episode. But from the last time we talked till now, from what I've seen, you've gone snowboarding in Switzerland, which looked amazing and everything. Did I see you on the bucket list? You're trying to go surfing in Hawaii?
Surf in California. Yeah, that's on the bucket list for sure.
Has that happened yet? Or
No, no, that might be an end of year thing.
okay, that would be perfect. Um, you ran some fast times, went back to college, and now you are pouring into the youth of America. Talk to me. I always ask this, to athletes, are you having fun? But it's related to, running and everything. But in this phase of life, are you having fun?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I'm having fun. I definitely have leaned into this sort of next chapter, and it was a huge step, a big change. And I think for the last 3 years, having been in Boston and just kind of feeling this like push of, like what that next step is going to look like. And I think running played such a huge part of my life for the last 10 years. And, I think it always will, but what that looks like and sort of how, my day is shaped, I think having a little bit more sort of emphasis in terms of the other things that also fill my cup and make me me. And I think a big part of that was being able to give back to not just the sport, but the time period that was really formative to me, and that was university. And it was sort of a figuring out process. I had applied all over. I was looking in Boston, I was looking at California, across Canada. I was applying to positions sort of broadly. And it just happened that this role came up at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. And that is where I've gone to school. And it was sort of this weird moment of like, is this really happening? Is this going to be a full circle? And I think, I guess to answer your piece in terms of, what now has shaped sort of my happiness and goals moving forward, I think running is now something I get to do. I still see it as sort of a professional, training sphere, but in the light that now, I have a career and it's sort of part two to that.
What, and I love that answer. I'm curious about, first of all, before I forget, I honestly think that you would be a great marathoner if you decided to go that route. I think you would kill it in a marathon. So if you get bored and just want to test out the waters, I'm just saying I can see 221 in your future, in the real near future. Um,
I'll
soon to
quote
be,
that.
um, you heard it here first. But you talk about, what's kind of filling your cup right now. I think one thing about you and just with anybody, it takes great courage to go after things that you love and to put your own well-being first. And you definitely showed incredible signs of courage. But it's not just making a difference for you, you're impacting so many other people, which was something that if anyone knows anything about you, it just seems that's how you try to live your life, is to make the world a better place. In this setting, what is so rewarding? What is the most rewarding thing that you found in this 3 months so far, being back at Queens and doing this role of helping other athletes?
I think it's not just about me anymore. And I think I said that quietly for a few years of just it was the most selfish time in my life. And I think there's beauty in chasing your own goals and, striving towards the next competition and, between Olympic cycles. And but it can be really lonely. And I think a lot of the time too, as athletes, everything you do is poured into this kind of singular pursuit and everything revolves around that. And, your relationships kind of dictated by that. And now it's like you're kind of taking a step back. And I got to work with athletes across all sports and see them go through these kind of highs and lows and sort of the joy they get from that. And I think it's so refreshing to see how other programs operate. And now I get to sort of be in this supporting piece of how can we give you the best experience possible with everything I've learned throughout sport. And I mean, I still have my own goals in running. I still, I want to chase fast times. but it just feels bigger than myself. And I think it's been sort of a really healthy shift. And I can look kind of positively back on all of my experiences, good and bad, and bring that forward now. So when I sit down with an athlete, it's like, okay, I sort of remember what this step was like, and like just remind me, how are you feeling, and sort of how can we work through that. So.
So explain to people, what is it, what is your exact role and what do you do day in and day out?
Yeah, so I work in the high performance unit at Queens within athletics. So we have 13 varsity teams, so around 400 athletes. And I'm in the athlete support role of anything to do with academics and athletics, but not specific to any team or program. So we kind of let the coaches do their things, in terms of their class schedules. We kind of help them navigate that. So thinking of sort of like a guidance counselor, but with a sport sort of spin to it. Anything that shapes their experience. And a lot of it has to do with leadership, training, development, community engagement. And a lot of the time, too, it's just sort of navigating these cross pressures and understanding sort of their overall well-being. And I like to think of it as sort of this safe space because we're not dictating their playing time. We're not, overseeing sort of their grade reports. It is really just I'm a person who wants to be able to help them succeed in any capacity. So it's been a nice way to bring together in terms of like my sport background, also like research experience with sports psychology, and just tying all of these pieces together from the last like decade, and coming back to a place where, I had an incredible experience and now, being able to see what the new environment is like with new athletes and sort of a different culture experience, but there are a lot of pieces that you kind of remember from when you were at that level.
What has been, and it's so, we talked about it before we came on, like these kids are different than kind of how we were growing up. And it's honestly just because the times like are different. The landscape is different. Um, I mean, gosh, I don't even remember when I first really was active on social media. I think I was in college, maybe when that was transpiring. And now, gosh, you could put a highlight tape on Twitter and a coach will contact you 2 hours later and stuff. So everything is different. Is there something that you've learned so far from the kids that you are helping to achieve their goals that you may not have even thought of or even imagined, whether it's a lesson or maybe it's a certain struggle where it's like, dang, these kids really have it hard or they go through this and this is how I can help them to overcome these obstacles?
Yeah, I think it's a constant figuring out process. And I think that's what makes an education institution a really cool place to work in, is it's young minds that are constantly evolving and sort of bringing new perspectives and challenging sort of status quo. And it's sort of this like intersection of all types of backgrounds and understanding that between 18 and 23 you have this age group, but that evolves in terms of what the makeup is like. And comparing my experience from 2012 to 2017 to now and seeing, I would argue there's still sort of the same goals. And I think when you think about an athlete, when you think about a student, when you think about just a person, what do they need? They need to feel belonging. They need to feel included, psychological well-being, how's their mental health? All of these things, sort of thinking about that broader piece and then understanding, what are the challenges they're facing? What is the climate that they're in? Um, but I think sport provides this sort of really real arena, and I think we overlook that a lot of the time now with, artificial intelligence and sort of these changing, virtual realities that we have. Sport is real. You have to train. You have to show up. You go to the game. Nothing's fixed. And, we're starting to bring in some robotics and new technology, but at the core of it, it's you're sweating, you're working, your heart rate's going up. We haven't really, developed or evolved, especially in 10 years. The human is still similar. We've become, we've broken, shattered records. We're advancing in a lot of ways, but at the root of it, in terms of what I'm doing and who I'm working with, I see them as people of young minds who are trying to develop and sort of take those next steps. So a lot of the time I think, and especially you hear from different generations of just like, oh, these kids, like I don't know how to deal with them. Like these are, and I think you just have to remember, they need the same things that we do. And I think it's a lot of the time with the amount of information that we receive, being able to filter. And I think when I sit down with an athlete and just understanding, their phones going off, their emails logged in, they have 12 different channels that they're trying to navigate, and everything is always available to them. That is the piece where I think about, how can we limit these distractions? How can we focus in terms of, priorities and time management and these skills that sometimes we would have taken for granted because we didn't have all these competing interests. That's what I'm most interested in. And I think the mental health piece plays a huge role into that, into how we're able to balance these pieces and how do we take care of ourselves in that process.
You said a word there. Because it does, like, you can't replace hard work. Like, you can't replace just the tangible things that, because honestly, and the more I was thinking about it as you were speaking, it's basically you can't give credit. Somebody had to create artificial intelligence. So somebody had to work hard to create something that's trying to replace, the things that you can do. Um, but there's like such satisfaction from developing new skill sets of working hard. And I don't know, you made a great point of seeing these athletes as people, and not just, I just happened to take a peek at the transfer portal for college basketball. And I think like 1,700 kids have entered the portal in like less than 48 hours. But I'm reading some of the stories and some of the mental struggles that these kids are actually going through and how it's hampering performance. And that's why I think where your role is, and how important it is. So I definitely appreciate that. When did, I don't want to say when did, and we'll get to some non-running stuff shortly, but why is mental health such an important, I don't want to say issue, but why is it so important to you? Everybody kind of has, why they really preach it and really look to make sure everyone's mental health, including the respective individual, is at a good, in a good place. But why is it important to you?
I think the internal world, that internal dialogue is like a direct reflection of sort of how you show up every day and how you view sort of externally what's going on. And it's the programming. It's everything that makes up you. And I think as an athlete, it's we don't train that the same way. We really train our bodies to be able to reach certain capacities. We really train, how many reps can we put in, what kind of splits are we hitting on the track. But when you think about the complexity, and again, I'm not a psychologist. I trained in sports psychology and research, but understanding the depths that a human can experience, and I think these emotions and these like when you really are faced with a challenge, everybody's approach to that is going to be different. And I think what we underestimate is that you can work on that. I think a lot of people assume that, I'm not capable or that's not a strength of mine. And I try to challenge that. And I think a lot of the times, you see certain stereotypes or, you quickly associate with certain athletes. Oh, you're really successful. So you must be really good at time management or, in terms of handling pressures or, the athletes that you see at the Olympic Games, it's like you have your life together. And we make these assumptions in terms of sort of the internal versus external, and you can't. And a lot of the time, I think we overlook how important that is because at some point in the road, once, you're you're back behind the scenes, it will sort of come out in some way, shape, and form. And I think in the sense of just overall mental health and well-being, even if you're at the pinnacle of your career and your sport, I think a lot of athletes have spoke to that where, taking care of yourself throughout that process and just being able to sort of navigate through different challenges and not removing those challenges. I think in my role, and again, I'm speaking from a Canadian context, not an NCAA sports system, but we're not developing system dependent student athletes. We're not creating this sort of environment where it's limitless and all supports are put in place and will lay the bridge for you to be able to seamlessly arrive at your destination and be successful. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to give you the tools to be successful, then to overcome those challenges. And that I think serves an athlete far beyond their sport of showing them you can do this, And I think it's not lowering the bar. It's like, all right, how do we get there? Like this is shitty, all right, let's work through it. And I think a lot of the times the athletes they respond to that and you see it in kids as well. It's like you give them that bit of responsibility and you tell them like, nah, like mess up, like teach them how to fail well. And in my experience as an athlete, that's the biggest thing that I took away, I guess, from especially my professional sphere is like it wasn't the successes, it was definitely the failures that taught me so much more about what I was capable of. And I think you do attribute a lot of your success to your failure. And I hope I can bring that now forward into this new role.
We need to find a way to get you on TED Talk. Like, God, Lee, because you are out here spinning gems. This is like, this is amazing. This is teach tape for I don't care what country you're from. Because everything you're saying, is true. I think, gosh, everybody's so scared to fail, but some of the biggest blessings come from failure. I mean, my mom always taught me you never grow on the mountaintop, you grow when you're in the valley. And sometimes it feels like you have a condo in the valley, and you live there repeatedly, but I don't know, there's strength when you rise up from it. So what you're teaching these athletes and these people is just, I don't know, we're gonna have to put you in the seat of the prime minister because you're just out here balling. I love it. You and I have something in common. We grew up in the 90s. Um, And I'm curious because you grew up in Canada. I grew up down here in Florida, which I don't know if it's a part of the United States or just a state by itself because we're so weird down here. What are two trends from the 90s and you and early 2000s growing up that you wish we could bring back that you think would fit perfectly in society, whether it's food trends, dress trends, TV, social, whatever? And I've been talking to people about this the last couple of episodes, and everybody's answer has been pretty interesting. So I'm curious to hear yours.
I think the first one that really came to mind, and again, taking into account that a lot of things have really cycled back. Originally, I wanted to say like, Walkmans and high-waisted jeans, but fashion has a way of just like recycling itself, and I think a lot of trends are the similar way. We'll have headphones with the strings coming up soon again, but um my I think the biggest pieces that I think about just growing up is just taking time. And I guess a good example of this is we sat down for, Survivor night on Thursday nights with my family. And it was on, I think it was 8 o'clock. So it was a little bit close to the bedtime, but it was dedicated, intentional screen time. All of
Yes.
us, were sitting in front of a screen, but it was this sort of ritual. It became a tradition. We all were watching together. there was a commercial break. Okay, we'd have to quickly run to the kitchen and back to grab a snack. And I don't think I've ever seen a family now sit down and all together watch a movie. Maybe, sort of a date night, movie, you go to the theaters or something. But there was something about, rushing back to the TV, and we didn't have limitless options. It wasn't scrolling through Netflix. It was a reality show that we all had to agree upon, which it probably wasn't my first choice. And then once Prison Break came around, my brothers were into that. And, so, but I think what it was a way of connecting. And now that everything has become so expedited, so sort of you have so many ways to do things on your own, and you're connected, but it's the ease of that, I think, has taken away from the special pieces of, yeah, whether it's a movie night. And I guess the 90s of just not having that access to always being available to others. I think that would be, it's the expectation. Like, how come you didn't read my text? And it's like, I was gone. I was outside for an hour. And now I'm just like, fuck it. I'll leave my phone at home. If I go somewhere now, it's like, what's the worst that can happen? Like,
Yeah.
and I think now it's like, well, share your location with me. Tell me where you are. And there's a sense of privacy that I feel like we've lost. And I
Yeah.
worry that if you never feel like you're safe on your own,
Yeah.
psychologically that has effects. And I think in the 90s, we were unsupervised. We played more maybe than we should have. It was like our parents knew where we were, but they kind of didn't. And I think through all of that, if there's like another piece that I could bring back, but it was like having that trust that like when you went to the party and you said you'd be home at a certain time, you were. Whereas now, if I'm going to be late, I'll just text you. I'm not going to meet with you at 7 o'clock. If it's like, oh, I'm just running late, I'll shoot you a message. We lose that commitment piece. And I think for me, in terms of friendships and relationships, it's just like consistency and showing up and knowing that someone's dependable is huge. And I think because of just social media and the access you have to everyone, you lose that kind of sense of um, dependability.
You you preaching because I remember your parents, it didn't matter where you were. Your parents knew how to get in touch with you. Like I had one of those little track phones way back in the day where you had to buy, minutes to put on it. Well, it died one day and I was at a game and I was like, oh, okay. Well, my mom knew where I was. Like that's just kind of how how it is. And obviously, today's age, you know, I don't know if I've ever shared my location with anybody. If somebody felt like, they're in some kind of danger, then that's, one thing. But you're right. I don't want people to know where I am when, at the time I am. You're so right. And it's funny, I talk about it all the time. My mom and I talk about it all the time. We talk about the day and age where we didn't have cell phones, where you talk about watching TV. Um, you could not, there was no recording something. It was like, yo, if you missed the first 5 minutes, you missed the first 5 minutes. Like you better pray that comes back again. And it usually would come on again in a week or so, but you were actually present in the moment. And it's so weird. I went to a restaurant one time and I heard myself talk. And the reason I heard myself talk with the person I was with is because everybody was on their phone. Like the waiter or waitress would come up and say, "Oh, you can download, take your phone, scan the QR code, and that's how you access the menu." I'm like, "What?
Mm.
Like what happened to paper, menus that are laminated that you sit down and that you read?" And I value, and I feel like you'd be the same way. I value handwritten notes still. Like I still write notes. Or if I really am thinking of somebody, I will get on the phone and call you or whatever case might be because I don't know if you had it growing up. I had a landline and stuff, and I that's how you communicated with somebody you haven't seen in a while. And then we went outside. Like
Mhm.
everybody's inside on this, and this. We went outside and we played basketball. You played, whatever form of sport. And I think we don't communicate as effectively with because we have too many ways of communicating that the message always gets lost.
Yeah.
And I think that's dangerous because we really don't. I don't know. Sometimes identities are placed in like the wrong things, and it's so crazy just to see how, to your point, there's no intentional time for
Mhm.
family. I would
Mhm.
love to be able to just leave my phone. You are a stone cold G for being able to do that. Just leave the phone and everything. Like if somebody really needs to get in touch with you, they'll find a way
Mhm.
and stuff. So yeah, that aspect I would love to. The one thing that I've on the show that the prevailing answer, one of them, has been just nobody sits at the table for dinner anymore. Like everything is just eat in your room or just eat in front of the TV or whatever the case might be. So I know we sound like a bunch of boomers, but there are certain things, I don't know, that I feel would just the world would be a better place if those things when it came back into play. Um, Also, the headphones with the strings, they already are back. I just saw them today.
Thank goodness.
I
Yeah.
have I got an iPod. That's old. I still carry an iPod. I don't listen to music on my phone if I don't have to. And that's the thing that comes with it, the headphones with the strings. Listen, even the phones, they don't even make the plugs for it anymore, whatever the case might be. How old were you when you got your first cell phone?
Grade 10, 15.
Yeah. I had a track phone when I was younger, but yeah, that's the thing. I don't think that was around the good age, like of getting phones. That's the average age. There were some kids in my class, they had the fancy phones. Um, but I saw a kid that was 7 and he has the new iPhone 18 or whatever version of it. I was like, must be nice little dude and
Yeah.
everything. But no, I was curious because you're a 90s kid. I've actually never seen an episode of Survivor in my life. So,
You still can. I think they're all recorded now.
is the series still going on?
I think they have it all on Netflix, so it's you can go back in the archives.
I have to download Netflix. That's just too much. But everything I have not seen, but I haven't heard of that show since you mentioned it. It's been forever. So maybe that's the new TV show to binge watch. You posted something interesting the other day on Instagram. It was about hustle culture and how, and I'm paraphrasing, they don't understand the value of rest,
Mm.
how it, refuels you to go out and, do what you have to do and work as hard as you can. When did you learn the value of how useful rest can be for you? Not just in running, but just from, just an individual level.
I think it's the understanding that um, you can only push for so long, and eventually your body will catch up. And I think that's how growth happens. You expand a little bit past, you push the margin, and then you allow yourself to recover. And there's sort of that refraction period. And I think if you think of it in like a science term or sort of like psychologically in terms of um, we sleep for a reason. We take breaks for a reason. I think it's about a 90-minute period that you should be, focused attention until you need time. On a flight, I get up every 3 hours. I think we start to fill in those periods of what could be rest with scrolling, with, oh shit, I gotta get a few more things done. That's okay. You do that for a couple days, you do that for a couple weeks, but all of a sudden you realize that you're exhausted. And I think mentally and physically. Um, And it kind of goes off our conversation in terms of intentional time, whether that's social intentional time, whether that's alone, quiet intentional time, whether that's sleeping or working. I'm someone who really kind of protects that. And I think I've created a lot of boundaries in my life in terms of when I'm available, when I communicate, the times that, I want to go to bed, but also when I want to wake up. And I do think it's really important for people to understand that, you can't be a superhero. And I mean, maybe that's against, what we're trying to promote in terms of like you can be a mom and you can crush records and you can work a full-time job and you can be, and I love that. And especially for women where it's like we're entering all, rooms and just we're absolutely kind of like re figuring the stereotype in terms of what is capable. And I think that took a long time to get to this point. So by no means am I going against sort of limiting or putting those limitations back. But I think it's creating an unrealistic expectation that we want sort of everything all at once. And that recovery piece, it's like it's not just taking your foot off the gas, it's putting fuel in the tank. And I think it is so important to think about sort of how you want to structure your day and a lot of people will just say they don't have time for it. And I believe it because they do a million activities. And I've never been a parent. So, when it comes to filling your weekends and sports, and, I kind of think about like, how would I want to do that? If I raise kids, how many sports per season? And I think they're always, there's always sort of a balance to that and making those decisions. But definitely in order to show up at your best and do your best, you have to make sure that you fill sort of your cup first.
I don't think the you just mentioned, women aren't refilling the stereotype, they're tearing down the stereotype. Um, but I don't think your comment really kind of dismisses that notion. Somebody said this the other day. They said they answered a question, and the question was, can you have it all? And the answer was yes, you can have it all. You just can't have it all at the same time. Because at the end of the day, something has to give. You pursue greatness in this area. Well, you can only be at one place at one time, mentally at one place at one time if you're serious about pursuing that. So naturally, there's another piece that kind of takes a back seat. So I don't think it diminishes the superhero role. It just says just like, hey, you could be a superhero, but just know that in order to be a superhero, these things kind of have to be in place. Does what I'm saying make sense? That's just my take on it.
100%. And I think it's like, what's the goal? Like,
Yeah.
if you just want to make a lot of money, like, absolutely. But there's going to be things that give. And for me, it's like, how can I be the healthiest, happiest version of myself? So if that means 9 hours of sleep, but it's not going to be as big of a salary, it's like, I'm okay with that. Like, I think there is this sort of misconception that then, if you're highly successful, you're going to have all these other things fall into place. And I think I admire balanced people, people who are, content and have built a life that they're, fully in tune with. And I think that level of sort of identity and just having less control, I think, and that's something I've had to learn as well, is just like if I really want something, I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make that happen. And from what I've learned, especially last year, it's, you try and make a second Olympic team. And to me, it was just sort of like, check, 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 get to the next stage. This is going to happen. It didn't. And I think that lesson was, you think in order for this, I'm going to be happy. This is going to happen. And then I'll be happy. And this like chase of make the next mark, make the next step and not realizing throughout that entire process. And there are definitely moments where I was like, wow, this is really cool. But it was about 30 seconds where I was like, okay, I'm really, really, really happy. And I was like, okay, get back to it, get back to the
Mhm.
grind, get back to the hustle. and not realizing the whole freaking time, I'm like, this is the goal. Like
Yeah.
I have so little control over that outcome. And then reframing it and thinking like, how lucky am I to be disappointed not to make another Olympic team? In the moment, it was just like, I don't know how to make it out the other side of this. But now I look back and I think there was actually something else, maybe even better, that I didn't realize while I was on sort of this like pursuit. And I think allowing for that of just there could be so much else that fills you. You don't even know that. But taking care of yourself and deciding sort of what are the pieces that bring me joy every single day and the things that are hard that I work towards, but then not feeling like you have to sort of have this dictated outcome that is going to determine, okay, now I'm happy.
It seems like you figured out, yeah, I can say that. It seems like you figured it out. Like you, because you probably experienced this just, and I hear it all the time. Can't celebrate, got to get back to it. Can't, or the one that I always heard and that people would tell me the mentality you have to have, they sleep, you got to work. And I'm like, okay, well, if they're asleep and I'm still up, then I'm probably going to be in a permanent sleep because my body's going to fail me at that point. But it seems like, and I have to say, you had a tremendous run. I don't care. You did suffer a setback, but you are like one of the toughest people I've got a chance to meet through this podcast because you overcome every obstacle and you learn something from it. I don't think it's just, people overcome it, but if you don't learn anything from it, then it's just kind of, I don't want to say you waste the opportunity, but you've definitely just grown and helping other people from it. I still believe this. That's crazy because y'all really competed from what 2018 to 2024 without a break. Like year after year after year after year after year, there's a major championship. COVID happens that mentally drains everybody because that's just a big conundrum of unfortunate, events and everything being canceled. But just to see how you've overcome that and the perspective that you've given is really cool because I don't know. You just don't hear that. You don't hear that there's beauty in the pursuit, but it's not necessarily linked to races. It's not necessarily linked to results. Like all those things happen so you can be at this exact space and this exact time and happy and just continuing to grow. Um, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to ask this. Does it, well, I guess I can do that. Do you look back on it when you do reflections and just say, okay, I'm glad it went the way that it did. And I'm glad to learn you shook your head. No, that's okay. That's okay. Um, Go ahead. You're good.
No, if I'm being honest, like I'm saying these things is like, from the perspective that I'm working to get into that headspace of everything happens for a reason. But it broke my heart. It still breaks my heart. And I think it it didn't need to happen, like fracturing your foot. It's just like, come on. Like what was like I've had an injury before. Like why now? And I
Yeah.
think like we're coming up on a year now and it's like I still haven't let it go. And I think it's easy for, in moments where I can say, I'm like in a really good position now. And I think everything kind of worked out to this point, but I believe I could still be where I am now and just have had, be a two-time Olympian. But what I question is, would I really be that much happier? And I think in my mind, it was like, I had this 3-year window. I was training in Boston. It was sort of the culmination of all this work that I've put in. There was lots of up and downs that, messy middle in between. I think the realization, though, is that a lot more people can relate to that messiness, to the figuring out, to the struggle, to the, you didn't get what you want. Not many people can relate to Olympic pursuit, to reaching a podium, to that's what makes the headline, that's what makes the cover. the inside of that book though, all the figuring outs and the lessons, I think that's now what I can carry with me. I love clean cut perfection. I love being able to check boxes. I think that's just in my nature. I'm a very type A kind of person. I do like control, and I think that's been the pieces now that I have to sort of unlearn of just like as an athlete, you work really hard and you want something. And now it's sort of letting things flow a bit more and knowing, it doesn't necessarily just have to be what you think it could. And I kind of alluded to that before too, but like you have no idea what's possible and what could be still sort of like unwritten in that. And whether, Paris or not, I do think I would have been in a similar position of what's the next step, make the next move. Life goes on, World Championships are happening this year. Los Angeles is in 2028. It keeps turning. And I think in that moment, you can't see anything beyond. Um, and you have formative experiences. There's going to be these moments in your life that are just kind of like these really big, profound, sort of like life-changing experiences. And I think for me, that was definitely one of them. Um, and I do think sometimes people don't always have to go through all of that. I don't like when someone says, everything is, there's a lesson or blessing in every, a silver lining piece to it. And I'm just like, nah, fuck, this really sucks. Like, I'll just be honest. I think sometimes we just have to be able to say that. And my, I guess my best piece of advice, like in those moments, are just like to go right through it and to not sort of already hop to the next piece of okay, what's the next move? How can I now sort of reroute? It's like, no, just sit in this for a bit and, don't let that then come up in every other aspect of your life because you weren't able to process in that moment. And I kind of halfway achieved that. I think it's still something that, resonates with me, but it was definitely you get a lot of life skills from it. So I guess that can be the sort of upside to it.
No, I think your answer was the best answer. Because it's real and everything. Everybody has that moment in life. I mean, heck, I wish I would be able to. I don't ask the question that way, but I'm with you. There are things I still can't comprehend. Um, that happened maybe 20 years ago, let alone 20 days ago or whatever the case might be. So, I appreciate that, because it's real and it's the truth. Let me ask you this last one, and then if you had any questions you want to fire at me, then this is the opportunity. What are you most excited for when it comes to the future? Just doesn't have to be running, doesn't have to be just in general. What excites you?
I think I think the unknown is just like I you make a 5-year plan and then you mess it all up. It's like I had no idea that Boston would be a thing and it was. And now I'm back in Kingston. It's just like if someone could have, written it all out, and I think a lot of my life was kind of spent sort of structuring and planning and executing, and I was really good at that. Like you give me a training program and I'll follow it to a T. But I've come to realize that's pretty boring because if our entire life, you know exactly what the next move is and what's going to happen, it's not really worth living. I think it's this sort of being able to discover, and I think through those fumbles, it's like you learn a lot about yourself. And I I do think I'm at a point now where I would be okay with a little bit of normalcy, of a bit of a stepping back of, being excited about someone else's goals and sort of building that, piece up, whether it's in friendships, relationships, and, a professional setting. Sort of being able to just sit back a little bit and be in a room and observe. And, I love that big main character energy. I think that's always a big part of me, but balancing that out with other things that are also important in my life and projecting that kind of towards future.
Big main character energy. I like that. I've never heard of that, but I'm gonna use that. Because I have a few instances where that could be used. So I appreciate that. What you got for me?
All right. I think in order of favorite, most favorite to least favorite, the NBA, the NFL, and the NHL.
I hate this question. I'm gonna tell you why I hate this question. Because it's a great question. You probably no, you didn't experience this in America because you lived in Boston. See, I live in Florida. Here's the thing. I love hockey. I love hockey. They don't show it enough here.
Mhm.
And we have a team in Tampa that won the Stanley Cup not too long ago. So that is what irks me. I would say the NFL. Dang. I guess I have to say I would say NFL, NBA, NHL with an asterisk because playoff hockey is just as exciting as any sport that I've seen. I can't skate or swim, but I just love I don't know. I watched it a few years ago. I watched it years even before that, and I couldn't stop watching it. It is beautiful. I want you to answer that because I'm curious. I feel like I know what your top three is, but I'm just curious.
Easily basketball. I think my favorite sport to watch just professionally. Now being able to work with all programs and teams, I can appreciate any game. Football, I think I was always just because I didn't understand it, you don't appreciate it as much. And I think once you understand sort of the dynamics and the plays but I do think I would put NHL second and then football third. Baseball, I enjoy the vibes. I didn't include the MLB, but I do think baseball on a summer night definitely has a place.
You have to go to a baseball game
Mhm.
in order to get that. You can't watch baseball. I'm sorry, MLB. I know there's a lot of baseball fans that listen to this podcast. Please don't come for me. But if you go to a game, amazing experience. If you're watching it on TV, mm, I don't know. I thought hockey would be first on your list.
I never grew up playing hockey.
That's
But
fair.
I enjoy a game. I think truly any sport I can get excited about. And I think that's like something I hope I can like dip into a little bit. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily athletic. I definitely, or being an athlete, I guess I'm not well versed in all sports, but maybe I can start to dabble a little bit.
I don't know. You're faster than all of them, so I mean, you do have that. Um, did you have another one? Give you one more because I actually have one more follow up that I'm curious about. Let me ask the follow up, and then I'll give you time.
Yeah.
Who's your NBA team? Is it Boston or Toronto or anyone else?
Is Golden State and Steph Curry.
Oh,
Yeah, I would definitely say. I
really? Okay.
Yeah, I think honestly, The Last Dance, like Chicago Bulls, I think watching that documentary just kind of sparked it. And then 2019, the Raptors won. But then sort of getting more into the West Coast, and I always sort of dreamed of moving out to California, then learning about they have a lot of good teams. And I think that, yeah, especially Golden State. But yeah, that would be the top team.
Oh, so you're really happy with everything they're doing. Not last night, but because I didn't watch the game, but I heard they lost by something crazy
Hmm.
to the Heat. I love Steph Curry. He's one of my favorite players to watch because I just never seen anybody shoot the basketball like he does, and it's just there's no such thing as a stupid shot with him. Um, those prime Golden State teams were so fun to watch. Even though I will say this, I'm a Magic fan, but we suck. But I guess my favorite player is LeBron James, so it was nice to see him beat them back in the day. But Listen, I got mad respect for Steve Kerr and Golden State. That's a fun basketball team to watch. Just wish they had Clay this year to go with everything now with Jimmy Butler. It would have been fun. All right, wrap it up. What's your last one?
Oh, actually, it's kind of on brand rap. I gotta ask Drake, J. Cole, and Kendrick.
I know your answer. Um, is none of the above a possibility?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, in order of favorite
Oh, okay.
to least favorite,
Um,
but it none of the above is all right too.
okay, so I would say I'm sorry, Kendrick. I
Yeah.
kind I'm sorry. Then I would say Drake, and then I would say J. Cole. I actually am not a fan of today's rap. I
Mm.
actually like 90, I like old people rap. So like old people rap, older rap. So like Wu-Tang Clan and The Roots and stuff like that. But listen, I was actually listening to Drake before we got on here. Um,
Mhm.
I forgot because some of that older stuff, 0 to 100, that gets me going every time. Got to get fired up to talk to the legend. I'm okay. I'm gonna guess yours and tell me if I'm wrong. Drake, J. Cole, Kendrick.
That's it. Yeah. But I will say, I think there's a time and place for everything. And I wish there was a bit more. There's a lot of hate. And I think, I hear Drake playing all day. I live in the high performance center, which is just outside of the gym. And playlists on repeat. And I think sometimes you can appreciate the music, not the person. And it has gotten very personal. I think a lot of people like identify now with certain artists. And for me, it's like I can appreciate a lot of music and I don't feel necessarily, I don't know any of these people and I can't make those judgments, but definitely my playlist is filled with a lot of a lot of Drake's albums.
I'm with you. I don't care. I don't care about the beef. Drake, listen, if somebody put Drake on, I'm not gonna not listen to it, especially if it's a bop. Like, like
Yeah.
that's just the way it is. So I'm with you. I didn't know that you were a hip hop legend like that. I think that's legit.
Yeah, it's definitely 99% of the music I listen to. So I can send my Spotify wraps if you need to link that in the show notes.
Can you please do that? Because it's the summertime. Hey, listen, you sent me music the last time. I want to see it because I may need to update my playlist.
Definitely.
That's the only reason I want to see it. Julianne, you are the best, and nobody could tell anybody otherwise. Where can the people support your journey when it comes to the social of the media?
Feel like I've been a bit more quiet, but definitely Instagram. I still update, I still post. I've got some really cool little partnerships too for 2025, which I'm excited about. And I'll be hitting the roads next week, and then down in Boston for the BA miles. So definitely follow along. I'm pretty active that way, but
Hey,
just down.
and she does speaking engagements. I saw that too. I was like, okay, got the blazer on, got the swag. I'm like, okay, Julianne, I see you out here informing the people and everything. But listen, thank you for the wonderful words and just the wisdom that you shared. Thank you all for listening. Love, peace, and chicken grease, and we'll catch you next time.